All right, friends. Welcome back to the Just for Friends Trying to Figure Out HR podcast, um, where we just try to help you guys out there in HR world. But before we do that, before we try to help you, we're going to help improve your style. If you guys go to the link in the description for our merch store, you can get a Just for Friends Trying to Figure Out HR shirt, hoodie. We got it all, especially the I Love HR. And then you can tell us which one of us you love the most. So we're going to be doing a tally of who gets the most orders. You can get a Mama Mel hoodie with I Love HR. You get a Dr. Green hoodie with the I Love HR logo, or a Jake from HR hoodie with his name on the side there. So you're supporting Team Jake, or you can be really, really cool and support the Big Llama. But anyway, I had to put the plug in there.
Little
Hey,
plug for you.
had to put the plug for the channel finally getting merch, um, as you guys have alluded to for several weeks. But before we get on topic, I figured I'd at least hit it off for that. So
Merch.
merch.
You said you did get it wrong though. I think you said if you want to be really cool, you get a big llama. We all know who the queen of this show is. If you
That's
really
true.
want to be cool.
Look, let's not leave Jake from HR out on that one, okay?
Anyway, so I
Speaking
know.
of sexual harassment.
Great segue. The topic tonight is going to be about workplace harassment training and sexual harassment training. You know, those uncomfortable things that we as HR professionals have to do. And so the first time you do it, you're a little unprepared. There's some pitfalls and some things that might happen. So we're going to talk about those things. But I think Dr. Green, do you have a story just to kick us off tonight?
I definitely do. This one is called the HR horror story, the Zoom where it happened. And you can replace that with Teams, Zoom, Slack, whichever one you want to use. But it was a normal Wednesday, where we're just trying to drag through the rest of the week. We're in our caffeine-induced comas to just make it through. But then I hear ping, 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 ping. And I'm like, what's going on? Come to find out, I start getting questioned. Did you see what happened on the all hands? And if y'all know what an all hands is, most of our HR do know what an all hands is, but an all hands is a meeting that most of your either whole org attends to, or your whole department that has a lot of people in it, they attend to as well. So I'm like, no, what's going on? Apparently Kyle, sweet, quiet Kyle from accounting, had joined the Zoom and updated us from his home office. Only Kyle forgot two things. One, turn off his camera. Two, to wear literally any clothes at all. So there he was, full screen, everything hanging out, all frontal, full confidence, but just straight up vibing in his birthday suit, okay? While sipping on his kombucha, and I'm not joking, he was sipping on the kombucha, like he was about to present quarterly 2 projections. Like that he was confident. And so the reactions, of course, everybody was like, oh my gosh. And then it just got worse. One person actually screamed. Someone snorted so hard that their laptop fell on the ground. And then the intern that we had has not been seen ever since. So it was so much of, I guess, of a big shock, but poor sweet Kyle, just blissfully unaware, was talking to an animal named Debbits. Remember, he's an accountant, and so it's just so great that he named his cat Debits. Well, anyways, so we had to, of course, draft a very delicate email titled "Camera Awareness and Professional Presentation." I'm sure some of y'all have had to say that, but not for somebody naked. Unless you have, then bravo for you. So then we had to schedule a return to pants training session, meaning make sure you're wearing pants. This is the part of the training that you're going to get. Wear pants. And add minimum clothing requirements. Once again, there's a dress code and a code of conduct. Please be appropriate whenever you're in any type of meeting. I don't care. Just in case, you know. But Kyle was finally found out that he was naked on camera, and he was mortified. But he did end up, of course, truly apologizing to the team with a note, "Sorry for the exposure, both financially and emotionally." And now every time someone says camera on, we all flinch just a little bit, hoping that Kyle is still wearing clothes.
There's questions. There's Mama Mel's got thoughts. I see it.
Okay, I have a couple of fears in life, right? Fear number one, my debit card declines, knowing damn well I have funds in there.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh,
Fear
yes.
number one. Fear number two, my camera being on when I'm working from home or when I worked from home. Also, Kyle, how are you comfortable sitting there just booty naked working, knowing that you're talking to like your leaders? What are you doing? What? Also, your cat has a weird name, but how are you even comfortable sitting in there like that? Why do people do that? Please walk me through that. Walk me through that mentality. Why?
Some people are nudists.
You know what? I really think it just has to do with Kyle being a true believer in full transparency.
That's I believe it. You don't have to wear pants to get ahead in the organization. No, I share the same fear, Mama Mel. Like, now, mind you, I'm never in any of those predicaments. Like, I might wear shorts, right? I'll be a little less casual. I am not in my skivvies or no skivvies sitting in a chair talking to people. Like, that's uncomfortable.
Exactly.
It's cringy for me. I don't know. I don't understand it.
I had a thought that went through my head at the time, which, as I'm saying this out loud, and y'all made some good points about like sitting in your chair.
Yeah.
Me, I have a leather chair. I'm just letting you know that if you are of any type of, like I cringe when I have to peel off of something, like during the summer in the car, and I have to peel off of the leather. I'm not doing that, but ass naked in my chair. So just want to make a point.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to be peeling off more than just your cheeks on the chair. I'm just saying. But, oh my God.
Texas. No.
But
we talked last episode, right? Last episode was all about dress code. And
yes.
I remember specifically saying, when you dress better, you feel better, you perform better. Sir, you're not even trying at this point.
He didn't care. He's getting paid.
No, but it honestly is. I don't know. I don't know how someone would do that. But crazier things have happened. But the question is, how do you own that? How do you own that situation, right? I mean, did you get a favorable camera angle? I mean, I'm just thinking, or what do you say? What do you say in this discussion with your boss, could you blame it on medical needs? You have an ADA accommodation that you need to make? I don't know. I'm just trying to think how we get out of this.
It was
I
a
mean,
TWFA.
I don't think not the PUFA. There's no way to get out of it. I think you just
No.
say,
There's one and only one way to
Alright.
get out of it.
How's
You gotta
this?
quit. You gotta quit.
Or get
Go find
fired.
another job. You ain't getting promoted anytime soon, not on the record anyways.
No. I mean, yeah, you're labeled as that guy.
You're forever
gal.
that guy. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're forever that person.
The
That
question
would-
you will
it'll
always
follow
get
you.
is, Kyle, you wearing clothes? Kyle,
Exactly.
you got pants on?
Oh, you prepared?
No, that's when your boss calls you before every conference call. Hey, we're gonna be on camera today. I just wanted to make sure you're aware.
Yeah. They ping
Make
you
sure
right
you
before
are
the
aware.
meeting. Hey,
Yeah.
we're on camera today. Just FYI.
Make sure you're
You know-
aware with this is going to be a brief meeting. Okay, brief.
They do the conference call, all hands, clothing not optional.
Exactly. keep all your hands where we can see them. But no, the other thing which is funny too, maybe it's not as extreme as walking across your screen butt ass naked, but like the people who have the backgrounds, right? Like the virtual backgrounds, and then all of a sudden like something pops up in the background. Could be a significant other, could be a picture you had back there that you thought was covered. I don't know. It's like I that is the funny part, because some people don't realize how these virtual backgrounds work. So we're like seeing like their whole family having breakfast behind them or something.
Yes, that happened a lot during COVID. I think I've shared with
Yeah.
you guys that my sisters are teachers, and so they were like in the virtual environment, right? And I'd hear them talk about like grandmas and moms and siblings like running in the background, and I mean, their kids, what are they going to say, right? But I wanted to say something. I don't think you can get away. Like, yeah, you have to quit, right? But I mean, you're gonna get fired. That's a terminable offense. Like, I don't see how you can justify not terming someone for fully exposing themselves, independently of was it on purpose or not. Like at that point, you just, what do you do? Like, you know what? I'm sorry.
You quick run to the doctor's office and you say that you have a sweating condition. That's what you do. You say, I have the sweats. I'm going through something. I'm going through the changes. And when I have heat flashes, hot flashes, I have to cool down my body, and that's a necessity.
Or
I don't know. That's the only way.
If you're good, if you're just really, really good at this, and if you are, then I need you to be an actor or actress if you're good at this. Make sure that you go to the doctor, like you said, and take a drug that is like, a little mental altering. And you could be like, oh, I am so sorry. I had no idea. I was taking Valium and hydrocodone. I did not. I thought I'd be fine. I've never done that before, but I thought I'd be fine. And the doctor said it'd be cool. But I'm so sorry. So please don't mind my junk. I apologize.
But what's worse, getting fired for? Oh, go ahead.
I need to be a disclaimer. We are joking. Don't take drugs.
Oh, yeah, please don't. No.
Please don't take drugs.
Yes, no.
Yeah, Becky.
Yeah, exactly. We're talking to Becky right now. We're totally kidding about some of these ways to get out of it. I mean, I like Jake's advice. Just quit.
At that point, you just gotta go. Like you
gotta go.
You just
don't quit.
Hold whatever
get
dignity
fired.
You have and get out of there.
Get fired? No, I'm quitting.
I want to explain to unemployment why I got fired.
No.
I mean, technically, depending on what's in the handbook, is whether or not they would actually win the unemployment claim. So,
I'm not fighting this. I don't want to revisit this moment of my life. I'm
Can
just
you
gonna.
imagine proof of
Do you
deliberate
have any
misconduct?
evidence?
Screenshot.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, the
Sir.
session was recorded for training purposes.
Exhibit number 1, junk on camera.
Yeah, no, I'm not fighting this.
That's when they go, where?
For
No,
those
you
of
know
you
what?
that are not in like the HR world, and
Yeah.
you wonder, right? Because HR trains quarterly, monthly, annually, whatever. You're going to go through these trainings. But for those of you that wonder or think like HR probably just sits around and has like a plethora of time to put us through nonsense trainings. No, we don't. The trainings come from these scenarios.
Exactly.
That's why we got to sit you down and say,
Amen.
let's talk about the do's and don'ts of Zoom, or today we're going to talk about sexual harassment. So if you've ever wondered, how did they come up with the topic? It's because of the Kyles of the world. And now we got to sit here for 45 minutes to an hour and train you on Zoom etiquette, or in our topic tonight, harassment, sexual harassment, workplace harassment.
Right. Yeah, and wear pants, guys. Just wear pants. Don't risk it for the biscuit, guys.
It's not worth it. Nobody
Don't risk it for the
wants to
biscuit.
see it out there.
Yeah.
I mean,
no,
some
but-
probably do, but we don't want it in the workplace.
Okay, then there. Good disclaimer there.
I've always been very curious because I take a lot of pride in the training aspect of HR. I think it's one of my most favorite things to do, because I like to educate. I like to plant seeds in people's brains and I like to see the wheels turning in their little brain and connecting dots. And I just like to impart wisdom. So when you guys are preparing for trainings, like, how do you prep for them? How do you approach trainings? What are some of your do's when preparing for training?
Great question. I honestly think so. First and foremost, for me, usually, unless it's your annual training, right? Unless it's your annual training that you have scheduled every year, there's usually an issue that occurred. So I tried to weave in what that issue was without like calling it out. That's one thing that I do in the prep. The other thing is, if you don't know your audience or know the environment that you're working in, that's a problem, right? Like, so I'll give you a great example. If you have employees who are laborers or construction, crews or something like that, like their corporate training is way different than an office staff person, right? So you like, the one thing I would tell people is tailor that shit. Like, make sure that it makes sense to the audience members that you're presenting it to. Don't just read slides that are prepared that say the rules. You can cover them, but like, damn, you got to tailor some examples and things to the people you're about to present and know who they are. And that's the biggest problem that HR, and that's on us, like our people, our HR professionals. This is where you mess it up, is you don't prepare and you go over there and you just drone and read a freaking PowerPoint slide, and that would infuriate someone more than anything. But those are my dues, is I prepare for it and I know who the audience is.
I love that. I love that you personalize the training. That's such a valid point.
I think a good topic to kind of add to that is, at our level of HR, because it's been a while since any of us sat in an HR generalist role. When we do trainings, it's not really with the employees themselves. A lot of times it's with leadership. So it's supervisors, managers. So I know one of the things I like to do, like Big Llama said, is familiarize yourself, customize the training to your audience. Like, you're giving leadership, you're giving managers this information that they're going to go back and either immediately relate to their team, or they're going to utilize that knowledge in situations that will come up in the near future where they're going to use that information. So if we're talking about sexual harassment, and I think Big Llama hit the nail on the head, a lot of the trainings we do is because something came up. So it gives you really great opportunities to touch on those examples of what verbiage to use, what words not to say, how to approach these situations, what to be careful of. questions that might arise or things you'll be confronted with that you're going to want to stop. Just stop and consult HR immediately if those come up.
Mhm.
And if you just read those PowerPoints, you just wasted an entire training session that could have been an email. Because if that's all you're going to do, just send an email. Let's hope they read between the lines, because that's about as efficient as it's going to be.
Mhm.
Be careful when you not say that, but be careful what our HR colleagues and friends out there, and those who aren't even in HR. Some states actually require a sexual harassment training once a year, and it's for not every state, but for, and don't quote me, people in the audience, please don't quote me, but there are actually even times like you get to take a sexual harassment course for 2 hours, like in the state of California and in
Oh,
New
yeah.
York. There's
God.
you can't just do 30 minutes. You can't just do a 15-minute review or anything like that. It has to be a state mandated amount of time. So when you do this, take it seriously, number one. But also, yes, personalize it. People already have a hard time with attention to things,
Mhm.
customizing it and making it a little bit more applicable to them. One, it brings their attention to the severity of it, but then also why we're doing this. It's not, promise you, it's not for fun. I don't want to teach a 2-hour sexual harassment class because Johnny touched Jenny's butt. I don't want to be in that. So
Mhm.
seven what?
I looked it
Sometimes.
up. There's 7 states that have mandatory training. California, Connecticut, Delaware, Illinois, Maine, New York, and Washington all have state mandated sexual harassment trainings, whether it's annual, every 2 years, or every 6 months.
Oh, see, every 6 months.
I
If you
wonder
touch
why
them,
that is. Is that like tied to their like unemployment rates and reasons? Like, I wonder what, like, why they would make it mandatory.
Well,
lawsuits.
Like, what?
yeah.
What's,
Well, I think it's I think unfortunately it's like it's really bad thinking of, oh well, if we have them in for X amount of hours, we can at least remove some liability, right? Like
Mhm.
if it's 2 hours, there's it's a more thorough training than someone just whipped something together or said something in a meeting. Because even that could be unfortunate. If you're an HR person and you allow this to happen, you shouldn't. But even they'll allow like a 15-minute presentation in a staff meeting to be the training for the year, and that's embarrassing. Like you really honestly, and again, it's sometimes you're not able to have that influence, but it's important to have the training, and it's important to tell people what they can and cannot do. And to Jake's point, if you're talking to leaders, what the hell do you do with that information when you get it? And that's even more important than just the general presentation, because leaders, if they mess this up, the liability is huge.
Well,
Mhm.
then when we talk about personalizing, right? Like, you can get there are certain levels of personalization or explicitive. I don't know how to say it. Explicit. I don't know what I'm trying to say. This is my pregnancy brain coming through.
Specific? Are you saying specific?
I I don't know where I was going with that. Sorry. Let me backtrack real quick. Ooh, let me take that back. I don't know how explicit we can get with like our lower level or starting entry positions, right? Like, their training has to be very generalized. But when
Mhm.
we train leaders, right? When we're specifically talking about leaders, how specific can we get with them? What are we like when we talk about personalizing training, tailoring it to your, your whoever you're training to, your audience, how specific should we get? Like, what examples are we using of sexual harassment, right? I know I've shared this with you guys in a past episode with an investigation that kind of marked my career, where it was same sex to same sex harassment, right? It was the first time I had experienced it, but that completely switched the way that I viewed harassment training and how I did it going forward, right? So, like, the approach that I took there was, you can't be afraid. This is happening, right? Our culture has changed. Our nation has, changed. We're evolving. And these are the things that we're faced with now. When we think about sexual harassment, it's not in that cookie cutter format that it was, 30 years ago, where it was always a male supervisor to a female subordinate, right? Like now the roles have reversed, or you have different genders, non-binary. Like there are a lot of factors that we need to think about when putting these trainings together. And so we shouldn't be afraid, right? To be specific or to be explicit with, yeah, we're training. It might be mandated by state, but we're also doing it because this is what we're seeing. But how granular do you get? What is acceptable to share with the teams without oversharing?
You know what? I love that because it really depends on the level and the persons that are involved. And I have a great story to kind of tie into what Mama Mel just said. I was doing an investigation with one of my previous employers, and I got a case. When it came to me, it was a physical threat investigation, the threat of death. But it turned into kind of encompass sexual harassment that was tied to that investigation. And I ended up supporting one of our more senior investigators out of our corporate office. So I sat in on all the interviews. And during the interview, he was asking all kinds of questions to a female person. And he was asking questions about, what happened in the situation where she was talking about nude pictures and sexual parts of the bodies that were being touched. And in the process of him questioning her, he was asking very graphic details. And when I say graphic details, I mean, he was wanting specifics on what the genitalia looked like, identifiable marks. I mean, he got very graphic with the questions. And of course, I'm in the room. I'm just an active witness taking notes. But after the investigation questioning ended and the person being interviewed left the room, I asked him, I was like, I've done thousands of investigations and I've never been that specific asking those types of details, especially, once we know what part of the genitalia was involved, we don't really need details about it. And he looks at me, and this is someone that previously worked, they worked for the company I worked for, but their prior job was, I don't know if it was like NSA or CIA, or it was some kind of federal agency that he worked for as an investigator. And he told me, he goes, I've worked cases where, because it happened on company property, we ended up being sued for liability. And when we go to court and it's a civil case, every detail matters, because if he's claiming or she's claiming that something happened sexually, and I'm going to be a little graphic here, but not too graphic. She's claiming that, hypothetically, she was raped, and she claims that the guy was circumcised. But obviously he has medical documentation that he wasn't circumcised. Then those facts will help reduce liability or credibility on the person making the accusation. That helps the attorneys fight this in court. And I'm like, I still questioned it. Like, I don't know if I'd be that graphic in my investigation, but I understood where he was coming from, because certain details about genital areas can be used in the employer's defense in liability suits where it's civil, not criminal. And of course, this company was a big company, so they had a lot of money on the line and they get sued a lot. So I understood his line of questioning, but like to Mama Mel's point, in that situation with those investigators and that line of questioning, I get the graphic details and the questions that were asked. But when you start getting down to more like supervisory manager, HR generalist, HR business partner, it really is experience and understanding the type of investigation and the details that are needed to know how graphic do you get when it comes to the investigation itself, or even the training. Because if you're HR and you're trying to teach managers, because in some companies, managers actually conduct the investigation. I've worked for companies where HR didn't do the investigation, operations did. So they need to know how to conduct these investigations. They need to know what questions they should ask. Because I have been in the room where I've had a female come in and say, oh, well, he grabbed me in my private areas in my pants. And the managers are like, oh, no, I don't want to talk about it. Well, don't be specific. And he's like, well, no, I need to know specifically, did he grab you in the front or did he grab you in the back? Was it a stroke or did he physically grasp you? Like those details matter because it kind of leads to intent also. And you need to kind of tie into intent because a lot of times, even people in HR, they get so caught up in the evidence being so black and white, there's no room for anything else. No, it doesn't matter. If it's even on video, it doesn't matter. You want to know the intent if it's possible. You want to know all the specific details. What caused it? There's been times where I've had investigations where I've had to ask those questions, and to come to find out, one person was sexually groped, but it was because they sexually groped the other person first. So, yeah, how graphic do you get into training with operations and leaders and even other HR members that need to know how this training is necessary and what questions to ask and what details to share? Sorry, that was a long-winded statement.
No. I mean, but it makes sense. Like there's certain things you have to get to the bottom of. Other things you can be a little bit more reserved, but
Get to the bottom of it.
Yes, sir. No, but
in some cases, yes, you have to get to the bottom of it.
Yes, you do. But I think okay, to Mel's point, right? And look, I because you're hitting on a lot of good things, Jake. And one of the things I was thinking of too is when you have to say the uncomfortable thing, make sure you're quoting it, right? So if you're doing an investigation or something like that, you can say, this is the allegation, and they said that this was said, the following. Make sure it's clear that you're just sort of relaying something to ask, confirmation. Sometimes that's necessary because you have to say the ugly thing there. But don't just say it out loud. Did you ever say this? That type of thing. But Mel, to your point or your question, I think you do have to get into the realism of it, but it's a fine line. Like it's a really fine line because there are a couple of examples you can actually make in a presentation, in a training, right, for sexual harassment or workplace harassment. But you have to be very careful that it doesn't turn into a joke. Like that's the key. Is sometimes all of us will hide behind humor or comedy to sort of say the uncomfortable thing. And yeah, that gets you through it, but you're also now condoning that type of behavior by making fun of it. So just, that's very, very careful. But you got to try to keep those things PG. I would say that, it's tough. It's tough. But the one thing I would tell you not to do, don't make it so funny. Like, look, you want to have an opener to like lighten people up. Sure. You can make a comment, show them a silly video or something like that. But like these, and I don't know who's in this industry, they're making these shitty corporate videos about harassment, but apparently these companies pay lots of money for them. So I'll start making them if they want to pay me for it. But the videos are so terrible. They suck. They really do. They're horrible videos. Yes. And nobody in there, like if you're part of a training group and you're in HR and you're playing cringy, she touched me on the shoulder video, stop right now. Go return your SHRM certificate. Go do that right now because you don't deserve it. You're a disgrace to the industry. But those videos are terrible, and they're terrible. And so that's why in the courage you need to have as an HR professional, HR leader, is to call it out and say, that's not going to work. That's terrible. It's a terrible video. Or look at the presentations you've been showing year after year after year after year and really analyze, like, are we still in this environment, right? That to me blows my mind that nobody does this. The last thing I'll tell you is we're in a generational shift. So harassment doesn't look like harassment did back in the day.
Right.
And people are less tolerant of some things. So for me, the one thing I've emphasized a lot now is to senior leaders, both in age and tenure and position, is what you put up with years ago doesn't fly anymore. And you better figure out how to work in these new parameters, or you're going to be in court, because people's tolerance for harassment, for sexual harassment, for workplace harassment is smaller and smaller. Like, it is minuscule. Like, and we've joked about it, like, oh, she looked at me bad and I didn't like how she looked at me. But that is the type of shit you're getting nowadays. And if you don't you don't figure out how to transform yourself as a leader, you're gonna get caught up in it and you're gonna get fired. So I don't know, just some of the things that you have to sort of prepare. But yeah, use some examples, be realistic, but at the same time be careful that you don't make it a joke.
I do want to emphasize, sexual harassment being in so many different forms, let alone that it could be on the internet, aka like Facebook, Twitter, whatever it is. You shouldn't be on it. We're on that anyways, but you get what I mean. But then also it is not just verbal or physical, but go deeper into thinking about emails. And I think I've said this once or twice so far on the podcast, is do not read into emails. Never, ever, 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 ever read into emails. And the reason why I say that is because people put their own tone in an email. Unintentionally, they don't mean to, but it's psychologically true. You will read an email in your own tone, especially depending on how you feel about that person.
Yes.
If you think Chad's a goofy guy, then you're going to go and read that kind of like a goofy email from me. But if it's from somebody who's always rude and socially unacceptable and mean to you, you're going to read it in that tone. So I say all that to say this: unless they tell you, I hate you, you suck, curse word, curse word, curse word, then you are to never, ever, ever read into email. Because then if you put it into your tone and you have seen that this person, Jake from HR, is harassing other people or sexually harassing other people, then guess what? You have that intention of thinking that when Jake from HR sends you an email, it's sexually harassing. That's the tone you're going to put it into. So please, words are words unless they give you the emotion. They tell you the emotion.
Yep. So I want to give a PSA to all the listeners that don't necessarily work in HR, or those who do work in HR, because a lot of people don't realize the parameters that surround harassment and sexual harassment. Because we get employees all the time that come up and say that someone's bothering them or someone did an action. Or we'll have an employee that tries to file a claim against the company where they're claiming they were sexually harassed, but they never shared any specific details. And hopefully I'm not the most hated person in HR for sharing these details, but it's a good thing to know so people know how to protect themselves. If you're being harassed or if you're being sexually harassed, you need to use those terms. You need to actually say, I'm being harassed, I'm being sexually harassed. And then you need to follow up with by, and then what happened. That's the perception of that harassment. Because I know through experience that, if you don't use those terms, you kind of take away a lot of your rights that are protected federally under harassment and sexual harassment. It's not saying that what's being done is right and shouldn't be addressed, but it takes away a lot of abilities of second, third, and fourth steps for you to take while you're continuously with the company or after you leave the organization that you no longer have a right to because you didn't use certain terms. Like, did you say I was sexually harassed, or did you say that someone keeps licking their lips at me and it makes me feel weird? No, I feel sexually harassed because someone keeps licking their lips at me and looking at me and poking their tongue out in a sexual manner.
I have to ask,
specific.
What is licking your lips at you? What is like? Seriously, I'm not joking. I've never heard of it put in that term.
As you say it, I'm licking my own lips. So just as he's saying, I'm like,
that's what I'm saying. I'm like, I don't know what I lick my lips whenever I enjoyed a good drink or something. You know what I mean?
We're recording, so I'm not going to give you a live example because that would just look really weird.
Yeah, no,
But what I
Give
exactly.
it to me.
what I will say to Dr. Green though is perception can be reality. So
Yep.
Mhm.
it doesn't matter whether you intend to do it or not. It's the other person's perception, and then of course the claim itself during the investigation will, you know, skim out whether or not they're doing it consistently. Are they doing it to everybody, one person? Is there a justified reason behind it that might be medically related? Or is it just someone that has some dry lips and we need to give out some complimentary chapstick to everybody in the company?
Amen.
Yeah.
Those
No,
Audrey
but
lips.
to Jake's point, right? Double-edged sword there too. Employees will use those words inappropriately for not again. So it does go both ways, but I agree.
Mhm.
If you're in that position, you're listening, and you feel like you're in that position, use those terms: hostile work environment, workplace bullying, harassment, use those terms so it is clear to the person taking that information what it is that we're dealing with. When you're describing something, even though in your mind you feel it's sexual harassment, right? It isn't left up to interpretation or protection. At that point, it's maybe you don't want to categorize it as sexual harassment. You want to say it's just harassment in general. Maybe it's workplace conduct, right? You can switch this thing up to be other things if you don't hear those specific words. And so, but it does go both ways. Some people will come in and go, I am being bullied, and this is a hostile work environment. And then you ask the question, what's going on? I received a write up for what? Because I was late to work. Okay, that's that's
Not
not
hostile work environment.
no, it's not. But what I'm saying is they know that some people do know that that will create an action on the behalf of HR. If they're a good HR team, that will create them to take actions and move, even if it's not substantiated. So I
Yeah,
like that point.
you remember the story I told you about the girl that she kept violating dress code, and she
Oh
said she
yes.
was being harassed. What management doesn't understand is that was a legal claim. She was being harassed by managers because managers were not following the appropriate steps in the accountability process. So therefore, it could have led to further legal action by her if we would not have stopped address management for not doing their due diligence, because it was leading, in my opinion, leading to further harassment versus doing our job, even though she was violating dress code.
Yeah.
So I do want to give one little piece of true advice in this. This is a serious moment for me, once in a blue moon. When you do have these situations and you hear those words, go in with empathy, go in with understanding. If you do not, and it's actually real and true, that employee will never trust you again with anything, because you've already violated the trust by not being there to. We are the psychologist of the world, if you want to call it that, for the ones who have to, be us. But we have to listen. But we also have to be empathetic and understand what's coming from them. Maybe 1,000% accurate. And so, please, the best advice I can give you on this piece is go in with understanding, care, empathy.
And act on it. I think one of the worst things that any HR representative can do is sit on those claims, whether it be because you don't believe them or because you don't believe that they're categories as sexual harassment, right? Like one of the points that I drive when I talk about harassment or sexual harassment is harassment in itself has to be severe or pervasive. Right? Happening over and over again and egregious enough to where it bothered someone. That's harassment. To Llama's point, the tolerance for harassment in the current climate of our nation is very low, and the sensitivity to harassment is at an all-time high, right? Everybody and anybody can get triggered by any little thing, and it's words like, I feel triggered, it makes me feel some sort of way, are the new ways of saying I'm offended by it or I feel harassed by it. And it just drives the point more for us as HR professionals is we can't sit on claims like that and just wish them to go away. As an
Yeah.
HR professional, I think it's one of the most unprofessional things that we can do is sit on those claims and wish that they'll go away. You can get your company into so much legal liability by not doing anything about it. And then you don't have a job. So act on it, right? Independently on what our personal belief is. And if we believe that this may be happening or that the employee is overreacting, do your due diligence and act on it. Raise all of the flags that you need to, red, white, yellow, green, whatever flag you need to raise to get the attention and traction going, whether that be from your employee relations team or your management team or your leadership team, if they're the ones that do the investigations, do that. It's not to say that that's like washing our hands from it, but you're getting traction going, or you're not sitting on them, you're not putting your company at risk for legal claims. And you're to Dr. Green's point, this employee has entrusted you with that information, right? Sometimes it's not easy for employees to come forward about these things. Not only can it bring some sense of shame, but it can be embarrassing, like highly embarrassing. If I, as a woman, am being harassed by, a subordinate that's also a woman, that would be a little shameful for me, right? And I'm just speaking for myself. I'm not speaking for women or anybody else. I'm speaking for myself, right? I try to always put myself in the shoes of our employees to empathize with them and to understand their situation. So I urge and strongly encourage all of the HR professionals, or even just if you're in a position to report these claims or allegations, please don't sit on it. Your employees matter. Their feelings matter, independently of what our opinion is. We still should do our due diligence and investigate all of the claims that are brought forward.
Yeah.
Love it.
Now, yeah. Now, I was gonna say, just because you brought it, like when you said it, I wrote it down real quick on our Google Doc. That one thing that we can emphasize in the training. So if you're going to be training leaders, right, on this stuff, it doesn't matter. Tell the leaders and make sure that you're clear in this statement. It doesn't matter if you think it's offensive, if your sensibility behind it, if you don't think it's, you don't get to make the decision on whether it is worthy of reporting or not. I think if you want to be fair and consistent, you report it. You bring it to someone's attention, you address it and take an action. Take a action, do something about it. But if you laugh it off, or if you say, well, that's not a that's not a claim, you are dismissing that person's feelings. And think about this, and this is what I would tell HR folks if you're doing this training, emphasize to people that how hard it is to bring this to someone's attention. It's embarrassing. It's an embarrassing feeling, like to be harassed and to be put in a position where you're uncomfortable to be around another human being or someone who, because they've violated your personal space or they've said things to you that are hurtful. And again, remove yourself out of the situation, your sensibilities, what you think, put yourself in their shoes. I like what Mama Mel said on that, and take an action. Give them at least their acknowledgement, the acknowledgement that I hear you. We're going to look into it, and take that information and report it. Maybe nothing comes of it. Maybe nothing comes of it, right? But at least that person knows that you take it seriously. But that is something we got to get leaders in these trainings, and this is why reading PowerPoint slides is dumb. Stop reading slides, start talking to people in realistic terms, and start sharing good knowledge, because I'm telling you, if you're an HR person and you don't understand what this means and you're just reading a slide, you're hurting your company and you're not doing well as an HR professional. That's my sincere opinion on this whole thing. That's why when I go to conferences or I go get trained on stuff, if you're reading the slide, I've checked out. I've
Mhm.
checked out immediately. You don't know what the hell you're talking about. Or if you don't relate it to real life, I don't want to hear about it, because you're just you're just reading. You're just a talking head up there. So
Mhm.
I don't know. That's how I operate. I never ever want anyone to think I don't know what's I'm covering in terms of material, but especially with harassment. It's
Yeah,
big
you
for
have to
me.
make it relatable. You have to make it realistic to them. You have to bring it down to a level where they understand what the potential impacts are from negating,
Hmm.
negating, bringing the allegations forward, for example. So in my trainings, I'm a huge, huge advocate for open dialogue and discussion, right? So also, preferably, I like to have trainings in person. I can gauge where everybody's at. If I see that people are dozing off, I can give a quick little 10-minute restroom break. Everybody get up. Here are some snacks. Set the ambience for them. But I like to have open dialogue and bring scenarios in. And this is where my original question kind of was going or alluding to. How granular do you get with your teams, right? But I like to interject scenarios in between, slides, whatever. I'm going to throw in a scenario discussion and let's talk about it, right? Let's talk about what are some of the implications that can come from us not reporting. What are some of the implications that can come from us condoning this behavior? And are we as a company condoning it if we're not reporting? If one person knows, does the entire company know? Is that what legally we're going to be looked at like, right? So I'm a huge fan of bringing scenarios, but those scenarios to kind of to what you were saying, Llama, those training videos, they're not realistic and not in the form that you can't, it's unobtainable. But and maybe you guys can say this a little better than I can, but we're not 30 years ago. Those scenarios, we are far removed from those scenarios, and what harassment looks like today is nothing what it looked like back then. And I think to go back to my original gender sexual example, we've progressed from that. So in bringing scenarios, I believe that it's okay to bring real life scenarios that are currently going on in your organization or that you've dealt with in the past, to encourage open dialogue and to get people to open their eyes and minds and relate to what we're talking about, right? Again, you can sit there and read slides all day long. You could have sent that in an email. I don't know which one of you said that, but that's an email for me. How are you going to catch my attention so that I truly walk away from this training thinking, all right, that was very beneficial. I walked away with this knowledge. Now let's implement it.
Love it. I think we're touching on all great points, but I want to give out a few additional details that might help those HR representatives that are presenting to directors and VPs, whether it's current training that you have or we need to revise some training or why we should implement additional training. Because for anyone that ever works for a company and you start recommending training, do y'all know the first thing that pops in operations mind when you recommend to do training that isn't normal? What's the first thing that pops in their mind? No. What's the first thing that pops in? And I grew up in operations. So what pops in an operator's mind when you say, hey, I need to pull 300 people into a training over a period of 3 weeks?
Productivity.
Productivity, but why? What makes them worry more about productivity is having to pay for all this labor that has no return on investment immediately. Because I get pushed back a lot in previous employers where it's like, oh no, we don't have the labor to do that, or you know what, we can slow roll that training. We can just do 50 people a month. And I'm like, yeah, but we have to get through 2,000 people. You have to show them why they should care as leaders and to help them understand the financial costs between a harassment case. I mean, the average settlement, and I'm going to spit some facts out here that they're all on the internet. The average settlement's between 1 to 50 million, and the legal defense alone, if you get out on the cheap end of legal defense, you're looking at $500,000. So some of the cases that I've kind of looked up as just references, which is good information to know, is some of the companies that were sued in the last 5 to 10 years due to harassment and what it cost them. And I didn't even know this. So Kay and Jared paid out $175 million in arbitration settlements over
Oh,
sexual
shit.
harassment. Fox News paid $90+ million in combined settlements and legal fees over harassment and retaliation claims. And as early as 2022, Nike settled a gender discrimination and harassment lawsuit for $7.75 million. Those are major numbers. Now, I want you to imagine that you don't work for a company that makes over $100 million a year, because while some of us do work for multi-million, billion-dollar corporations, there's a lot of organizations that they only bring in $50 million a year in revenue. They only bring in $100 million in revenue. That's revenue. That's not profit. So imagine if you have to shell out $7 million in settlement fees. That could bankrupt your business or cause massive layoffs and downsizing. So why should you care as a leader? Well, let me tell you about that. It's like you have to show them why they should care beyond the things that should matter more, which is the empathy, the employees, the morale of the team, the growth, the development of the organization. And while I hope every leader has those in their mindset, let's just be realistic. Some of the leaders I know that we've all worked for at one point or time or another, all they care about is money. Unless you put a dollar sign behind it, you're not going to win an argument. So when you do that business proposal, don't come at me with all these analytics of how it's going to help me hire better candidates or have better retention, even though those are great things to talk about. Tell me why I should care from a financial perspective.
That's a great
You have
point.
you have to treat training as an investment.
Yeah,
Mhm.
because you don't see the immediate return, but when you have to shell out that $7 million or at that minimum level, $500,000 in legal fees, I don't think people understand how much attorneys cost when a corporation reaches out to them, even just for advice and guidance alone. But when they have to go to court, $500,000 easy on a single case.
Let's go a little further, though. Let's dig deeper. You're interviewing someone. Okay? Or not you guys, but
Okay,
we'll say that.
Go ahead.
Okay. Jake from HR is interviewing a female
Becky.
candidate.
I'm interviewing Becky. Mhm.
Becky. Yep, Becky. Becky is dressing all scandalous. And Jake is being inappropriate.
As a Becky should.
As a Becky should.
Becky walks in and I'm like, wow, Becky, you really look like you dressed to work here.
You see what I mean? And so then he starts asking questions that are really not interview-related questions.
I know, Becky, where'd you get that dress from? What you wearing up under that dress, Becky?
That dress looks better on my floor, Becky. Oh, yeah.
All right. Keep going.
So my thought is, I want you to consider it even further just that. That person can sue you for sexual harassment. It doesn't have to be they even work there at the moment. Like, they're interviewing with your organization, and guess what? Boom. Now that person who Jake from HR is getting sued with that company for Becky being told that she looks good and what's under her dress and how scandalous she can be.
Do you know?
Go ahead.
And I was going to say, because you talked about that person filing a lawsuit, what a lot of people don't realize is if the organization or HR allows harassment to continuously go unaddressed for a lengthy period of time, it's not just a lawsuit. It can turn into a class action. And for anyone that's not been through a class action, it's terrible. And a lot of people end up getting fired at the end of that class action suit. So, yeah, the lawsuits alone, the EEOC complaints are terrible. But if it turns into a class action, you refresh your resume. Go ahead and start getting it out there because you may not have a job at the end of that.
Yeah, I'll change my name at that point because I need a job. One thing, and I think we just did it. We just did it here. Dr. Green and Jake just kind of role played a little bit here. Can I just give you my 2 cents on role playing?
No.
3 cents. I don't want to.
While I acknowledge that it can be an effective tool, sure, I personally find them to be okay. if you any of you listen to this podcast, you know that some of the things I don't like is children singing. And add to the
Video.
list. Add to the list. People role playing sexual harassment scenarios or workplace harassment scenarios. It is the absolute worst. It is not Juilliard. This is not your drama. This is not the time to shine in front of an audience. Role playing to me is there are things I'd rather do. I would actually rather walk on my knees on rice than to actually either facilitate role playing or do any type of role playing. So when you have that in a presentation, just know I've deleted those slides. Just saying.
Now look, I want to be the devil's advocate, but not on role playing. I agree with you. Role playing is a terrible thing to do in active shooting exercises, active threat exercises, sexual harassment exercises. Don't role play, okay? You're just opening your door to an investigation within HR on HR.
Yes.
But there's nothing wrong with reading scenarios.
Yes,
and talking about the right and wrong things that occurred in this scenario. There's nothing wrong with reading a scenario, but emphasize this is not role playing. So please, no one participate. We're just going to read a scenario and we're going to talk about it. So it's going to be a discussion.
Yeah.
Let them know.
I like that.
Okay.
I like that.
We don't want anyone getting up and just grabbing you inappropriately saying, "Oh, I thought I was a part of the play."
Exactly. Or like the guy, the HR trainer who likes to demo the touch on the shoulder. Don't do that. Don't.
I've been that guy.
I have Mama Mel next to me. Let me know if it's inappropriate where I touch her. Here. It's like, stop. Like, cringe. That's wait. Let me use the new term. That's sus.
You're doing too much, bro.
You're doing too much, bro.
Like, no cap.
Oh my gosh.
That was fire. Truly, that was fire.
No, hold on, Dr. Green. Come on, hit us with the bussin'.
It was busting.
We want training to hit different, but not that different.
I don't know if I wanted to hit in any way, but I do bring the Riz when I am doing my presentations. Okay, I just gotta let you know, and it's sometimes it's a little skibbity, but it's okay.
Listen, low key IRL, you don't have the Riz.
I know you all just, maybe with the exception of Jake, Googled Gen Z slang. I know.
Look, Green, you're straight up Ohio.
Dr. Green does not have children old enough to know these terms.
Exactly.
I have one that's about to be 17, so I hear this.
I am hurt in so many ways because
it's okay.
Y'all know that I talk to Jake from HR at least 2 or 3 times a week, and he has kids that says these things, and I hear them, and that's how I learn about phantom tax. About their food, about their possessions. Most kids talk about food.
I know you chat GPT Gen Z slang. I just know that's up on your screen.
Okay,
right
now you've already failed. It's Gen Alpha slang. So if you're gonna get it, at least get the right generation.
Gen Alpha.
I don't think it is Gen Alpha. I'm pretty sure it's Gen Z.
Pretty sure it's 75% Gen Z. There might be 25% of Alpha.
Mama Mel, why don't you go ahead and Google that for me and see if you can find out if you're right or wrong.
Oh, it's on Google. It must be true.
Yes, exactly. They can't put anything on the internet that isn't true.
It's in Chat GPT. We have to put it into a legal document.
Lord.
Okay, HR rule number 1. Do not, for the love of everything that is just and right, and like Big Llama said earlier, return in your SHRM certificate if you have one. I feel bad for you anyways. But because PHR is where it's at, baby. But ChatGPT, Gemini, there's several different AIs out there. Do not use that as your source of truth. It will get you in trouble because a lot of that stuff is maybe it's 80% right, but it's pulling everything from everywhere to get your answer for you.
Yeah.
So don't let it be your source of truth. Go to the encyclopedias or the encyclopedias for all the people who are weird.
People don't
And
know what encyclopedia.
One of the things to reference with that, Dr. Green, is for anyone that's not been in HR long enough to realize this, just because it's the law doesn't mean you won't lose a lawsuit. You might win you might win a criminal lawsuit, but in civil court, ooh, you are on trial for the public opinion. And I'm going to tell you right now, when you're doing trainings or when you're adapting policies and revamping them and giving them to HR, you want to make sure that you're paying attention to the legal statutes or the current court cases that are being prosecuted and decided over the last 5 to 10 years to know what you should and should not be putting into your trainings. Because just because you reference a law does not mean that training is sufficient enough. You have to make sure that you got to identify what companies are losing lawsuits, especially civil suits, in court, so that you can add in the small factors to protect your company from losing lawsuits. Because just because it's legal doesn't make it ethical, and just because it's ethical doesn't make it legal. And I think a lot of people in HR don't realize that. I think Big Llama has the term, it's a double-edged sword. If you don't get stabbed by one side, you can get stabbed by the other. So we're just going to grab it in the middle and hope we don't bleed to death holding it.
And pro tip, when you use ChatGPT, okay, get rid of the dash lines, the double dash lines. The ChatGPT is notorious for it, and the bolded
and the stars.
And the stars and the bolded references within your document. People know that you're using ChatGPT, especially if you say, I hope this finds you well. That's like a ChatGPT staple.
Yeah.
So just a pro tip for you HR folks out there.
Let's go a bit further than the pro tip, Big Llama. If you're going to use ChatGPT, like you need a good person that's going to plagiarize in college, rewrite it in your own words.
Yes, exactly. Read it through.
Let's demonstrate for the public, Jake. ChatGPT says in 1995 he was born. We say
he was born in 1995.
Hey,
right.
That's right. Unless you have a PhD, and no one says in 1995 he was born. Okay, and just because some of those individuals that have that PhD, I still wonder what college they were accredited. Not you, Dr. Green. We love your PhD.
Not this one.
Yeah, we need that PhD to be globally credited. Okay, if it's not globally credited, let me know. I know there's a site you can pay I can get my PhD for $75 right now.
Yeah, well,
I think I feel you're being a little salty there, Jake from HR.
Not to you. My saltiness is toward other individuals that have gone for higher education in the past, and I've tried having courageous conversations with them, and they're like, well, I have a master's, well, I have a PhD. So I'm like, well, I love that for you, and I've dealt with 75% more cases on this than you have, so experience out trumps education.
Yeah, sit down, Becky.
Exactly.
Yeah, sit down, Becky.
Dr. Becky.
No one cares about your PhD from university in a town full of 800 people.
Low key.
Well,
that's true.
Can I before we go around the horn and wrap up I would like to point out that this is episode 12, and this is now the 12th reference to Dr. Green's PhD.
It's never ending. It's not an episode unless it happens.
It's a consecutive thing. Like every episode, there is one mention of the PhD of Dr. Green being a doctor. So it's something we're just going with. We're just going with this. So
we're hoping that it gets us more viewers. We're hoping that it gets us more exposure.
Right, because PhDs love to hear other PhDs talk. So, if you're here for PhD talk, welcome to the show.
This is that you found your home.
You found your home, exactly.
And
Sorry, Dr. Green.
as the Gen Alpha would say, you're just a little delulu.
It's really
Are you from
irking
Ireland?
me that
I hate that he's
It's
using
like-
them correctly.
it's really irking me that you're not
What-
using it.
Why do you have to say it like he would? He said it like he should be on a box of Lucky Charms.
Yeah, he's the lucky
It's
leprechaun.
magically delicious.
That'll get you into a sexual harassment training.
Exactly.
Immediately.
You know what? I am using the terms correctly. And if you have
You
anything
are.
to say from the audience, just go ahead, put it somewhere in any comment section and tell us how I am wrong. But I will tell you, just like I tell everybody else, just put the fries in the bag, bro. Just put the fries in the bag.
All
I
right.
don't
enough of
even
your-
know what that means.
enough,
Enough of
Gen
this.
Alpha.
Cut him
Enough
off.
with you.
Mute him.
Exactly.
It means
Yeah.
just spit it out. You're taking too long.
We got it,
All
Ginger
right.
Rogers. Let's go.
Well, we're gonna start the roundabout with Mom and Mel. Give us your closing thoughts before Dr. Green gets on another tangent.
I'm going to leave you with some do's and don'ts when prepping for training. It doesn't have to be harassment training, but it just could be anything. Identify why you need the training, right? What has happened? What are the needs of the business? Or maybe it's just an annual training that you have to get through. Okay, cool. Use a variety of training methods, right? Use in-person, virtual, personalize your training, right? Tailor it to your specific group, tailor it to your audience, and treat it as an investment, but create a positive learning experience. Bring snacks, damn it. People like snacks.
Yes.
They like to learn and eat at the same time, and just make it a fucking enjoyable. All right. If I gotta sit there and listen to you for more than 30 minutes, you're gonna lose me. Now, let's see if you give me some lifesavers. I'll give you some points for that.
Pizza.
Some don'ts is do not apply the one size fits all to your training method. Do not read slides. Do not think that everybody's going to grasp information the same way that you are understanding it, right? Cater to all of their learning styles. Also, don't treat training as a punishment. It's not a punishment. It's an investment in your company. Right? You're not going to see the profits immediately, but you shouldn't treat it as a punishment, right? We're not, now you have to sit in this training. Also, there are sometimes recommendations from, employee relations or managers that conduct investigations to put people through training, and that's, totally different route. And then lastly, follow up with your folks, right? I firmly believe that it's important after you've wrapped up training that not only you keep a tracker of who went to your training or some type of attendance tracking system, but follow up with just a really quick email. Thanks so much for joining me for the training. It was a pleasure getting to spend time with you guys. Appreciate all of the feedback. There, be done with it. Do some type of follow-up. I'll leave you with those do's and don'ts.
Okay. All right. Come on. It is different, Dr. Green.
Oh gosh. I would definitely tell you I'll back Mama Mel in a lot of those things. I love training. I love teaching. There's so much that goes to it. But kind of like a little bit of parts of this podcast, make sure your training doesn't make people cringe or just hate it. Let it be something that can be rememberable. I don't think that we need to be boring in our training. We don't need to be like the guy from the commercial. Don't have
Clear
dry
eyes.
eyes, get
Yeah.
clear eyes. Yeah, we don't need
Bueller.
that.
Bueller. Bueller.
So give them something memorable. Make it savage. Do something. That's my advice.
All right, Carol Baskin. All right, Big Llama. Words of wisdom from the Llama.
Okay, so I think when we're talking about harassment and sexual harassment training, that type of thing, stop using scapegoats, right? If you use like HR made me do this, like so for example, we do sexual harassment training or we do harassment training, and we say, hey, look, leaders, this is important information. And the first words out of your mouth to your team is, HR is making me say this, or HR is telling me that this is what is the new rule. You don't buy into it. You definitely don't believe what we just told you, and that's how you're selling it to your people. So I think that's one thing that you should never do is say HR is making me do anything, because it shows you don't care about it or you don't believe in that particular topic. So that's a really, really bad thing. The other thing too is as an HR team, um, you know, review those materials. Like do a deep dive on those materials and make sure that it makes sense. It makes sense to people. Um, I get it. Sometimes we're pressed for time. Sometimes you're put in a situation where they just say, "Hey, look, you got to step in." Becky called out sick, and she was supposed to present, so you got
Damn
to
it,
step in.
Becky.
I know it's him and Becky, and I get that. I get that. That might not be the most opportune time, but if you have the ability, you have the time, review the material, make sure that it's relevant, and just be prepared. Be prepared and know your subject. People know when you're bullshitting and that you don't know what you're talking about. People know when you're just reading the slide. Pro tip: if you have to read the slide, just to kind of keep the message on point, say, I just want to look at the slide real quick and make sure I'm covering the main points. And then you can read a little bit of what's on there, especially if it's like a policy or a state statute or something like that. That's totally acceptable, but that is the exception of your presentation, not the norm. So there's ways to do that, because again, we're not all going to remember every single rule, every single policy, and sometimes you do have to read the policy word for word and just say it. Say, as part of the training, I need to make sure that I read the policy to you. So just speak to your process. But anyway, be prepared for it and be honest and upfront, and don't make it a joke. Don't make your presentation a joke. There are times for humor, there are times for levity, but don't make your entire presentation a joke, because then they won't take it seriously and they've learned nothing.
Absolutely. Well, I think y'all beat Becky to death on all the good points, so I won't touch on any of those. What I will leave the team with is, for those who get the training and those who create the training or those who issue the training is the bare minimum expectations for most trainings. There are trainings that are missing key points and things that need to be added. The trainings were designed for bare minimum, and they are designed that way for a legal reason, because there is no one size that fits all. You cannot cover every scenario or every situation, which is why HR exists. It's why lawyers exist, for us to reach out to for advice and guidance. So when you do a training, that's why you should not read the presentation, and you should personalize it based on your company, your situations, your needs, so that you can add those factors in to get a step above the bare minimum. And then to also protect the company, because if you put too much in a presentation and you're encompassing so much information and you leave out one fact, you're now putting liability onto the organization as to why they didn't cover it, or you're giving you're giving leadership an escape route for why they did or did not do something, because the training said to do this exact step, or the training did not cover this exact step. So every presentation should annotate somewhere that this is not all inclusive. If your presentation somewhere on some slide does not say, and I get that we want to cover a lot of stuff vocally, but on the slides itself, somewhere, it should say that this is not an all-encompassing training. That there are, in some terms, we have to make sure that we notate that there's always going to be more scenarios, and as those arise, please reach out to HR or legal for further advice. So that is my point I will leave the team with. So I will bring us to a close, as I say, with much love, until we call you into the office next time.
Well, that's another episode of the Four Friends Trying to Figure Out HR. We didn't solve anything, but hey, at least we tried.
And by tried, we mean we laughed, we overshared, and we probably violated some HR guidelines ourselves.
But remember, this podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Don't take our advice. Seriously, don't.
And if your HR manager asks, you've never heard of us or this podcast.